May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rabbi, for all those that are listening, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give Sister Rishma Ibrahim shifa'an la yughadiru saqama, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rabbi, give all the sisters attend that attend this class and the other classes, give them all, Ya Rabbi, the rizq, give them the happiness, and give them the ilm and the fath. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen. So we basically were doing somewhat of a translation yesterday. قال ما منعك ألا تسجد إذ أمرتك قال أنا خير منه خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. So let's go over it really quick. And what we were talking about yesterday was pretty much, just giving a translation and just a quick overview in regards to these ayat. So the story is basically in regards to Iblis when he was ordered to make sujood. Let's go over it really quick. When he was ordered to do sujood, but then he basically does, it's kind of weird that well, I mean, it's going to be common for an arrogant person to do that. But the question was, ما منعك ألا تسجد إذ أمرتك? Did he actually answer the question? He didn't answer the question. He was deflecting. He said, أنا خير منه. Well, what prevented you from basically applying the order? So he basically gave a different response and more of deflecting and said, أنا خير منه. I'm better than him. In other words, what is the response? He basically wanted to say, well, I don't want to follow your order. And the reason why I don't want to follow the order is because he considered that his argument was, or his order, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's order, was irrational, was not making sense. So his response was, well, your order was not making sense. And the reason why was it making sense is because I'm actually at a better place. So he considered that you're asking me to do sujood for somebody that does not respect and does not, deserve my honor. And therefore, that is, the inference is that your order is out of place. Your order is not wise, is not making sense. It is basically not befit. So in other words, when you're looking at the question and the response, you would know that the inference is that Iblis basically considered himself as on top of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's on top of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's order, and therefore he basically wanted to say, I have a justification, and my justification and my reasoning is actually better than your reasoning of why you're asking me to do this and follow this order and to actually prostrate for Adam alayhi salam. Okay, خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين is also to say that his substance, and this is very common, by the way, when we talk about racism, when we talk about a lot of the different things that we would say as an implication of arrogance, it usually starts with somebody thinking that somehow they needed or they deserved superiority, and that this superiority was, whether it was as a result of their race or as a result of some social status or as a result of perhaps economical status, and therefore they had the right to basically get one, perhaps a privilege, or perhaps maybe a certain pardon, or maybe maybe allowing them to get an extra not only privilege, but also have the right to be dismissed in a number of different responsibilities. So that's basically that discrimination. And subhanAllah, we had seen that. I had seen that many, many, many times, especially in the Gulf, one race thinking that somehow they're superior to others, and then they would give themselves the justification to uh, to deal with the other people as if they, one, they did not have the equal rights, two, as if their pains did not matter, and three, that they would give themselves the exception to basically have the right to humiliate other people. So خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين is basically speaking just that he considered himself as superior because of his own creation, because of his own substance that he is created from, and certainly he thought that that was actually making him superior. And whether that was race, whether that was what you're created from, that does not mean that you would have the right to somehow think that you are in a better place. And by the way, it also shows Iblis's ignorance about biology and physics, because he thought that Nar actually had better energy and better substances. But in fact, Itin has a lot more material, or has a lot more minerals and matter, and has a lot more in terms of different things that can make energy than fire. But that's basically showing that he was very myopic, even in his understanding of what Adam was created from, or what Adam actually had. He was very ignorant of, even when he thought that he had a good argument, he didn't know that he actually lacked the ilm even in the argument. And that's another thing, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be the only center to basically give the right legislation. The right legislation. So no matter who you are, and you thought that you had a good argument that was giving a better result than Sharia, you would basically be sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically al-alim al-khabir. So whenever you thought that you somehow had a better ijtihad, or had a better legislation than Sharia, make sure that you understand, basically, you understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is وَهُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْخَبِيرُ, and that الشَّرِيعَ, everything is a maslaha in it. Everything is basically in your favor, and everything is basically in your interest. Says Umayya, go ahead, dear.
Yeah, I have a question. When I read this ayah long time, I figured maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. Correct me, please, if it's wrong. That shaitan or iblis, he misunderstood sujood. He thought that he has to make sujood to Adam, but actually he has to make sujood to the Allah, how we create the third kind of creation, because we have malaika and we have jinn, but this is it's from both. It's from material thing, okay. And I guess that Allah asked him to make sujood to the greatness of this, يعني عظمة الله, to create something not from malaika, not from jinn kind.
So
So he
Iblis
misunderstood
knew
and he
very
fell
well
in
that
mistake.
this was Iblis knew very well that this was not to make sujood as to glorify, or at least as to worship Adam. He knew very well that this was to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Mm.
In other words, the command, just by obeying the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's basically worshiping Allah, since you are following the command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted. This is not to worship Adam, but this is to worship Allah. But that's what we also read when he says, "Ana khayrun min khalaqtani min nar." That response is letting us know that Iblis understood that he was not worshiping Adam, but that he was basically commanded, and that the whole sujood was to worship Allah, and which is why he responded, well, you created me from this and you created him from that, in order to say that your order itself is flawed.
What for?
That's what he wanted to say, that the order was flawed, and that he basically
Wrong?
has a response to the order, and that he had seen it as flawed.
What's flawed, please?
flawed يعني إنه فيها
تورية؟
لا، إنه فيها خطأ،
آه.
إنه فيها إنه الأمر ذاته، الأمر ذاته في مشكلة، في إشكال، الأمر ذاته في خطأ، الأمر ذاته غير منطقي.
يعني قلة أدب مع الله.
طبعا
مم.
هي بالأخير انه ما طبعا رد ابليس يحمل في طياته انه هو اعتبر بانه امر ذات الجلاله، انه الامر اللي رب العالمين اعطاه
خطأ.
اياه انه غير منطقي. هو اعتبر على انه غير منطقي، انه كيف تعطيني بتأمرني باني اعمل انا سجود لادم، لما الامر ذاته يحتمل في طياته الخطأ. هيك ليش؟ لأنه هو قال له خلقتني من نار وخلقتني من طين.
آه.
طب
يعني
ليش يرد عليه بهاي الطريقة؟
ما هو
ليش ما قال
الخالق.
له أنا ما بدي أسجد؟
بس
لأنه ربما مش حاب أسجد، أو يعني عذر
يعني
ثاني.
آدم have to make سجود to إبليس.
Absolutely. All right. قال فاهبط منها فما يكون لك أن تتكبر. Here we go. So there's that response that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to know, that the main reason why Iblis basically objected was an issue of arrogance. It was an issue of arrogance against who? Against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why he said, فَخْرُجْ إِنَّكَ مِنَ الصَّاغِرِينَ. So, of course, the punishment, and certainly whenever we're talking about العقوبة, العقوبة is going to be من جنس العمل ذاته. So in this situation, he basically was practicing arrogance. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to basically punish him from the same area of his ego. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to take away his ego and basically humiliate him. But what did he want? He
Make
wanted أنظرني إلى يوم يبعثون. Keep me alive, or keep me basically keep me there until the day that they would be resurrected. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to keep him until the day of resurrection? The answer is no. He just said, قَالَ إِنَّكَ مِنَ الْمُنظَرِينَ. You will be given a certain time, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't specify. Did he give him what he wanted? No. He didn't give him what he wanted, but he said, you're going to stay a certain amount of time, but then that doesn't mean that I'm going to give you exactly when and the time that you had requested. That's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will determine, not Iblis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will determine exactly when the end time for him is going to come. قال فبما أغويتني لأقعدن لهم صراطك المستقيم. And certainly فبما أغويتني, this is basically because he was going to be punished, so he was going to somehow retaliate. That's what he wanted to say. He wanted to retaliate for basically getting punished for refusing to prostrate for Adam. So he said لأقعدن لهم صراطك المستقيم. And the word لأقعدن, القعود قعد actually means to sit, but he basically is reflecting it in a way that he is determined to sit in each and every single corner that basically leads us to the straight path. To in every single corner that leads the straight path, Iblis was basically going to be sitting there and waiting to do whatever it takes in order to prevent people from going to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ثم لآتينهم. Now this ثم is giving me ثم لآتينهم. This is basically telling us that even before even before the person starting ibadah, before the person starting basically following the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he basically is determined to prevent the believers from going the right path. Then you see thumma. Thumma is basically telling us that he is basically determined that there's another level of how he's going to basically do whatever he can in order to prevent the mu'mineen from doing basically the service to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what he basically wanted to do. He wanted to basically stop them from being in service to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore he said, ثُمَّ لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ. I want you to look at this one. There are two things here. You see this lam right there, and this noon that has a shadda, and also the same thing, this lam right there, and this noon that had a shadda. This is a form of an oath. This is a form of an affirmation and a determination to actually say that this is what I will be doing. And then, of course, he says that he's going to be communicating with basically the children, with Adam himself and the children of Adam in different ways and from different corners, from all corners, in order to basically prevent them from being shakirin. I want you to connect between the shakirin right there and the Surat al-Mustaqim, because when we said shakirin, we said it's more comprehensive than just saying Alhamdulillah and just being, I'm so happy about this. Thank you for this. No, because shukr ni'mah, to be thankful for the blessing, it is not enough to do shukr and ni'mah. It's not enough to just basically thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to just say thank you. But it is extremely important to also live based on the ni'mah and apply it in your life and put it in where it belongs. So giving you an example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you money. This money, you would have to spend it for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, in other words, if the person is using that money for something that is basically against what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had ordered, that would be a form of not being thankful for a ni'mah. To be thankful for a ni'mah actually means you contributed in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had basically set where it needs to be spent in, how it needs to be spent in, the amount that it needs to be spent in, and so forth. This isn't just talking about money. This is also talking about different potentials that you might have. You probably have a potential of maybe intelligence, maybe beauty. How are you using this beauty? Are you using it to somehow to seduce others, to make money out of it on TikTok or whatever it is? Or are you using it to please your husband? What are you using it for? Are you using it to I guess get fame and all of that, or are you using it in a halal way? Are you covering it with your hijab, or I want to expose it right there in order to get attention and to get people's social acceptance and get people's endorsement that I'm so pretty or whatever it is? This is, a very simple example for teenagers, I guess. Okay, قال اخرج منها مذءوما مدحورا. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically had given him that punishment, مذءوما, so basically meaning humiliated, and madhura. Dahr, whenever we say dahr, when something is in front of you and you just don't want it there, and then you start just tossing it out, that's madhura. It is tossed out. It is evicted out. That's what madhura means. Madhura means he got evicted. He basically got tossed out. He basically was pushed out. لَمَنْ تَبِعَكَ مِنْهُمْ, whoever follows you. And I want you to لَأَمْلَأَنَّ, same thing, that lam right there and that noon that has a shadda, that's an oath right there. لَأَمْلَأَنَّ جَهَنَّمَ مِنْكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. Now that the words are directed at who? Now this is directed at Iblis himself and at the children of Adam, whoever insists or whoever basically takes the path of Iblis, وَيَا آدَمُ اسْكُنْ أَنْتَ وَزَوْجُكَ الْجَنَّةَ. Now the whole discourse is right now shifted at Adam and his wife. يَا آدَمُ اسْكُنْ أَنْتَ وَزَوْجُكَ الْجَنَّةَ. O Adam, dwell you and your spouse. Now watch and look at the word زَوْجُك. The word زوجك, it basically means a pair. That's to basically let Adam alayhi salam not see Hawa but as something that is a pair of you, that is a part of you. Zawj is something that is similar, something that is a part of something. Zawj is a pair of something. In other words, for Adam to see that she's basically a part of me, she's basically my own similar piece, a piece that is similar to me. Okay, this isn't talking about total equality, because of course we have another ayah, ليس الذكر كالأنثى. Yes, it was quoting basically Sayyidah Maryam's mother's words, but at the same time العبرة بعموم اللفظ لا بخصوص السبب. العبرة بعموم اللفظ لا بخصوص السبب. We're going to be taking basically the theme as in the general statement and not necessarily in what it was mentioned for. All right, and not what it was mentioned for. So ليس الذكر كالأنثى. Yes, there's no total equality, or at least we're not equal in everything. Men are different than women in their physical anatomy, or their psychological situations, and so forth, and a number of different areas. Their social status basically is also going to be social responsibility. Let's say it that way than the word status, because status means something else. So the social dynamic is going to be different. The responsibilities, the rights are also going to be different, because they are different. Because there's certain responsibilities that you have to carry as a female, and certain responsibilities that he has to carry as a male. And therefore, if we're talking about responsibilities, then we're talking about rights. So it's not 100% we're equal in everything, but we're equal in humanity. We're equal in different areas, but not in everything. So, فَكُلَا مِنْ حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا. In other words, this is talking about the rizq right there, but وَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةِ. This is also to let us know that a lot of the muharramat, a lot of the things that were considered haram, they're basically the same on Adam and Hawa and not different. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting us know that trespassing the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically a form of dhulm. And we said ma can mean to exceed the limit. Who determines the limit? Well, it's basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The word ma could also mean to trespass a boundary, and ma could also mean to act in a way that carries injustice. So when we look at each and every single one of those, if you're saying exceeding the limit, that is basically to mean there's a limit that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had set, and that going beyond Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's orders is in a way basically giving disrespect and dishonor to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's dhulm. That's why it's a form of going against basically the honor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, it's also a form, not shirk, because shirk would be in relationship to believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is a form, that's why it's called a sin, because it's going against the honor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, it's going against the ibadah. Why ibadah? Ibadah is not narrowed down to just worship. Ibadah is more comprehensive. It basically means to embrace Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's orders. So in the situation of Iblis going against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the order itself was worship. The order itself, which basically is to follow the order, the command to basically prostrate for Adam. That was the part of worship that he was supposed to do. That was the part of worship that he was supposed to do. And therefore, by not following the order, that's a form of dhulm. That's a form of dhulm. That's a form of exceeding the limit. All right. The other meaning of dhulm is that it's basically committing injustice. Why? Because justice is not what would be just towards other people, but it's also towards yourself. So if a person basically had chosen to go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if a person basically had chosen to commit something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not permit, then in that situation, this is going against basically the definition of worship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said. Just give me a second. So when we say injustice, it is basically not giving yourself service. It is not giving yourself service by basically going against the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does that mean? So Sharia itself is actually acting in your favor. Sharia itself is acting in your favor. It is acting in your service. The second that you basically had decided to go against Sharia, you did not give yourself the service, you did not serve yourself well, and it is not going to be in your favor. Okay? So that's why it would be a form of dhulm. Okay? So whether we're speaking about dhulm, meaning oppression to others, or whether it's oppression to yourself. That's why when you look at another ayat, it would basically use the word that ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُم, that they were the ones to oppress themselves. How did they oppress themselves, and why not consider it as oppressing others? Because you didn't serve yourself well by going against trust, by lying, by going against the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by going basically against the limits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had assigned you to basically act in accordance to. Okay, so when we look at فَكُلَا مِنْ حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا, this is to let us know that فَكُلَا مِنْ حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا, so whether that was Adam alayhi salam or whether that was us, that the things that are halal are actually more than the things that are haram. And according to majority of the scholars, al-aslu fil ashya' al-ibaha, the main and the general default ruling is that everything is supposed to be halal until proven otherwise, or unless proven otherwise. That's not necessarily the qaida that all scholars would actually agree with, because some scholars actually say the opposite. Some scholars actually say, no, everything's haram unless proven otherwise. Okay? At the end of the day, is that we would basically go in accordance with understanding that almost everything is supposed to be halal, and unless we have a text who basically proves that such a thing is haram, which basically is also describing a lot of the different things that are in foods or probably behaviors, etc. There are certain limited things that we are not supposed to be basically approaching or engaging in. It's very limited. But of course, the area that is within the limited area is where Iblis plays on. That's the area that Iblis will basically be sitting in, letting the person get seduced and manipulated, that this is probably where all the good entertainment or well the good feelings are in, or where it probably feels good to trespass. And of course, we would know that a lot of those that would trespass the limit, they would think it's cool to say bad words, or they might think it's cool to act in an unethical way, or a way that is basically not approved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They would think it's cool, or it is presented like you act in this way that it's funny, that it's entertaining, or that it's probably feeling good, when in reality they're actually ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُم. that it's actually ظلموا أنفسهم. It will come back to you. Okay, ولا تقربا هذه الشجرة فتكونا من الظالمين فوسوس لهما الشيطان ليبدي لهما ما وري عنهما من سوآتهما. Let's go right there and actually see what al-Qurtubi wanted to say in regards to these ayat right there. وَلَقَدْ مَكَّنَّاكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, we went over that, and وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. Let's just see al-Qurtubi really quick. Let's see. So we're going وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ right there. ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. Let me just erase all of that so you could actually see it. Okay, here we go. So we can see each and every single one. You know, it's making it easier for you. Here we go. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ. So خَلَقَ, we said, is different than بَرَأَ and is different than جَعَلَ. جَعَلَ actually means to create something out of something, and in other words, to form it. And خَلَقَ is to create out of nothing. And خَلَقْنَاكُمْ ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. And then we had basically shaped you. Okay, let's see. ثم صورناكم. Now, some scholars actually said صورناكم, even though the root is basically to let us know that this is shaping something. So when you look at صورناكم, some scholars actually said this is referring to that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created people as in a reproduction, a way of reproduction by nutfan. What is a nutfa? A nutfa is basically the sperm or is semen. In other words, we were created by a different system of reproduction. Adam alayhi salam was created in a different type of creation. He was created from clay, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made Adam alayhi salam's reproduction system line to be through basically a nutfa, to basically be through nutfa or semen or basically sperms. And in other words, the continuation of creation of Adam was in a different type of a system, and that's صورناكم. So that was one interpretation. That صورناكم was basically to speak about the different system of reproduction. Other scholars, they actually said, no, صورناكم, why are you going far? They considered that that's a far interpretation because they considered صورناكم actually means to put something in shape. So therefore, the way that you are shaped, that they're in that shaping, that you basically are put in a system of how you are shaped. So that there's a system, we know that there's a system basically through your DNA, and that basically passes through basically all the genetics and all the different the genetics information that basically is carried even with the sperm, and that is the information that passed on, basically 23 chromosomes and 23 chromosomes from your mother and father, and then of course certain things would determine height, other things would determine basically the different information that is necessary to form you, and that formation that is basically that صورناكم. So one thing to learn basically from that is that the system, of course, for an atheist, they would basically say, well, this is basically matter in motion. They would say, well, it's basically, we know, we could see it, that it is data, information that is carried in the genes, basically in the sperm, etc. And therefore they considered that that's matter in itself, given energy from the universe and nature, and that basically passes on, and that there's a certain numbering, there's a certain law of nature, so they would call it a law of nature, that basically determines how such qualities are passed on, and how this basically would start shaping the person's image or whatever it is, etc. But of course, we would say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give energy in itself to basically work, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one to actually make this energy, is the one to basically make this force, is the one to make this basically unfold in different ways. So in other words, it's not matter in motion, but it's basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's force, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power, basically acting within whether the matter or acting within the universe to basically bring in a certain order of how somebody is shaped, how somebody is given certain potentials and someone else is not. So it's not necessarily the different things that are in the system basically acting on their own, but it's that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that is controlling the system. He designed the system and he controls the system. So the system itself doesn't work on its own. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that controls the system, to mean whether you're speaking about elements in chemistry or whether you're speaking about the different things that are basically doing a certain movement in biology, that at the end of the day, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is basically the one that created the system, and the system acts in accordance with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's orders. Okay, so if we're talking about, let's say, I don't know, the white blood cells attacking, I don't know, something that is coming into your system, the white blood cells, they acted by the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that had given the white blood cells basically the system and how to move and when to move and what to attack and how to attack and what method to use and all of that, that is basically given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they do not act on their own as, think of it as just forces working together, but it's actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you look at ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ, another question that comes up is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a hadith that خَلَقَ Adam, that he created Adam على صورته, that Adam was created على صورته, and then that brings into confusion. Does that mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam as the pronoun? If we are to say that على صورته to meaning basically as the image of Allah, that would be very problematic, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There's nothing like unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we are not created in the image of Allah to mean that we look like Allah. Subhanallah, this is basically a straight contradiction to when the ayah basically said لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. So we're not as in the image of Allah, like what some interpretations would say, but what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created us in was basically the same creation, that we are created in the same creation as Adam alayhi salam. So if we were to look at the anatomy, we're in the same anatomy as Adam alayhi salam, with kidney, liver, heart, basically the different organs, etc., all of these different things, and probably even the psychological formation as well. All of that is just like Adam alayhi salam. So therefore, خَلَقَ Adam على صورته, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all the different details of Adam's creation, whether we're speaking about anatomy or whether we're speaking about the different details within that creation. It was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that had created him and also created the formation and what that would look like, whether we're speaking about the appearance of it or whether the function of it. So keep that one in mind. Whether in its appearance or in its function, that is a surah. Okay, that is a surah itself. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ثُمَّ إِنَّا نُخْبِرُكُمْ then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically lets us know that he basically created that he created basically Adam, and then ordered the malaika to basically take action in doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala اطلعوا برا. All right. Okay, so Ibn Abbas and al-Dhahhak. Ibn Abbas was a Sahabi, and when the Prophet ﷺ died, he was almost 13 years old. Okay, almost 13 years old. Is basically that Sahabi that the Prophet ﷺ had made the dua. Allahumma علمه أو فقهه في الدين وعلمه التأويل. Ya Allah, give him the ilm in the deen and give him the ability to interpret it. So when we talk about al-faqih في الدين, الفقه في الدين is not, during the time of Ibn Abbas, it was not to learn the rulings. Like today, we would say fiqh is to basically learn the different rulings. In other words, human behavior and the rulings that relate to human behavior and all of that. But during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, al-fiqh was a more comprehensive word than learning legislation. Faqih fi din is learning everything about the deen. So this is the biggest, basically, the biggest blessings that you can get is making you the dua by the Prophet ﷺ, basically, to give you the fiqh, the understanding of the deen itself. Okay, al-Dhahhak was not a Sahabi, but a Tabi'i. All right, they basically said خلقنا آدم ثم صورناكم في ظهره. So that basically when it says خلقناكم ثم صورناكم, so they basically had a slightly different interpretation, but I would really say it's really close to it, that we had created you, and in the backs of Adam, we had formed you in his back. So, there is a different hadith that is basically saying that we were created 50,000 years before, okay, how do we explain it? So you were created even 50,000 years before you are created right now. But we don't actually have a hadith that is necessarily authentic to basically say it in that way. All right. So let's continue right there.
Aisha, recording stopped.
Yeah, but it's still somebody was recording on their own, so yeah. But that's okay. The person that was recording decided to basically probably end the recording. That's okay. All right. Let's continue right there. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ, and we had created you, meaning Adam alayhi salam. That's another explanation. So when it says خَلَقْنَاكُمْ, those words were actually directed at Adam. Does that mean we're not created? No, it does mean we are created, but the words were directed at Adam alayhi salam. Okay? And then ثُمَّ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ. And then basically خَلَقْنَاكُمْ. Then Adam alayhi, then the malaika were ordered to prostrate for Adam alayhi salam. And then ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. So there was this time lapse. So I want you to look at the word ثُمَّ, because the word ثُمَّ basically means that there is a time lapse. Keep that one in mind. It's different than the letter fa. Okay? Different than the letter fa. Here we go. ثُمَّ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ. Which one is fa? Just like this one. فَأُولَئِكَ. فَأُولَئِكَ. This would basically tell me that there is either a transition, and we talked about it. No need to go back to it again. Okay. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. So some scholars actually said خَلَقْنَاكُمْ, and then basically that this was to basically say, according to that interpretation, to say that later on the system of reproduction was created differently, but at the end of the day, the foundation of your creation was coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that ثُمَّ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ. Then we were told basically Adam. Let's see. خَلَقْنَاكُمْ, he said that the word is Adam. So they said خَلَقْنَاكُمْ to basically let you know that it wasn't just Adam, but it was all that Adam stands for, basically on behalf of all his descendants, or all the offsprings of Adam are actually included. So here, some scholars actually said it was mentioned as Adam, that it is a plural in itself, since it wasn't just him, but it was including all the children as well, all the offspring of Adam, that they were included in Adam. And that's why the word خَلَقْنَاكُمْ, that was another interpretation. They said خَلَقْنَاكُمْ is in the plural form, not ثُمَّ خَلَقْنَاكَ, but خَلَقْنَاكُمْ, that you yourself, as a human being and a son or a daughter of Adam, that you were included in this. You were included in this, but Iblis basically refused to not only prostrate to Adam, but also do that prostration when you two were included in Adam. So in other words, yes, Adam was the one that was physically there, but it was presented, he was representing all the people that would later be created. So that was basically Adam representing, and that's why it said خَلَقْنَاكُمْ as in plural form, to basically say, well, you are presented in this. You were created, you were all created. In other words, Adam was representing you, and even in your shape, and even in your image, and then the Malaika were ordered to prostrate, but then Iblis refused. So that was why another interpretation of that صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ, that it came basically in a plural right there with that kum right there, not صَوَّرْنَاكَ, but صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. Okay, let's see. Another interpretation, they said خَلَقْنَاكُمْ, that this basically would mean خَلَقْنَاكُمْ to refer to Adam and Hawa. Hawa is basically Eve. Okay, so Adam was from turab, was from basically dust and clay, and Hawa was created from ضلع. What is a ضلع? A ضلع means rib. So was she created literally from one of his ribs? This is an authentic hadith. This is an authentic hadith that she was created from Adam, from the rib of Adam, and a bent rib of Adam. So what does that mean? Does that mean we're part? Does that mean he's the origin and we're basically like a side thing? Or what does that mean? At the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had told us that we complete one another. That we complete one another. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Hawa to give Adam a sukoon. To give Adam a sukoon. To give Adam that sukoon, tranquility, to give calmness. And therefore, the main duty for a wife is to bring stability within the household. The main duty for a wife is to bring calmness to the household. The main duty for a wife, in order to do that, is to understand the husband, understand the man, and what triggers, of course, all these different things. I know, ladies, sometimes it's hard, but we have to do it. Okay, let's continue. All right, Adam is from... Go ahead, dear.
What happened?
Says Umayya, I can't hear you, dear, because you're whispering.
Yeah, I'm talking. I'm saying, what happened? I forget it because I wait up till you finish, then they ask you the question. Ya Allah.
What happened? You wrote a question in the chat?
No. I have it in my brain, but my memory not help me now.
Oh, it slipped. Sorry. My bad. I probably took too long to answer.
No.
Yeah. So
When I
it's okay.
remember,
This
I'll ask.
Cynthia AI assistant, it's an AI assistant, so don't worry about it. Yeah, it isn't somebody that is somehow, coming in. Let's see. So, Sister Amir is saying, so Adam was a test for Iblis as he was commanded to obey Allah. His test ended since he failed. He used tamkeen, which is his aql and free will, in the wrong way, and Iblis became a test for Adam, but Adam repented and Allah forgave him. And an ongoing test for humans and jinn, as he tries to mislead those with free will. Allah forgave Adam, but he sent Adam because the original purpose of his existence is to be tested. I remember reading a hadith in Sahih Muslim that Musa and Adam argued. Musa said to Adam, "You are Adam, our father. You caused us to be expelled from paradise." Adam responded, "Are you blaming me? Are you blaming me for something Allah had decreed for me? before he created me. Then Prophet ﷺ concluded Adam prevailed over Musa in argument. Okay, so I guess that was a note. You're right. Good job for quoting that. Satan did zulm against himself. Also, is kufr shirk worse than what Satan did, as Satan did not deny Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence, but was against worship. Okay, now one thing, dear, is kufr is not only in denying Allah. Okay, we have to understand that tawheed is in different forms. So it's not just in denying Allah, that's one form of kufr. Another form of kufr is shirk, basically, to worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's another form of kufr. A third form of kufr is to include someone else and associate basically partners to any of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's also a form of kufr. So kufr is not in denying, or is not exclusive to denying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if someone is to believe that someone else is perhaps maybe the creator or the one to give rizq, or to give the perhaps maybe certain elements to attribute it to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's a form of kufr. All right. So to say, yes, kufr is worse than shirk, well, shirk is a form of kufr. All right. All right. Let's see. Let's continue right there. And the other way,
I remember.
you remember it? Go ahead, dear.
Yeah, please. How can I say in English عالم الذر?
عالم الذر.
نعم, the time we were يعني when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took us from ظهور آبائكم وأقام الcovenant علينا ألست بربكم. This was عالم الذر, isn't it?
The best I can more explain. I don't have a specific terminology for it.
Or
But
beyond.
we can explain it before existence. We can explain it before existence, before the time of existence, and during the time of Prophet Adam alayhi salam, because the word dhar, let me explain the word dhar. The word dhar actually means the smallest atom, or the smallest molecule, or the smallest or the smallest thing we see in existence. So dhar actually means these little tiny particles that you would see as dust. That's dhar. Dhar could also mean ants. Okay? That's what it means. Okay? So dhar can mean ants and can mean the little, dust particles, and can also mean molecules. Okay? So, but in when the scholars actually refer it as alam al-dhar, they would basically refer to that as when we were basically at a time of pre-existence. At a time of pre-existence when we were not necessarily created, but we were created as at least our particles were created.
Right, in the metaphysical way or shape.
Well, in basically before creation. So before the actual time when we were created. So that was the time of pre-existence.
When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أخذ العهد علينا لست بربكم, this is the time.
Right. So this is pre-existence. And when what we mean by existence is basically when we existed on earth. All right. So the best thing and even though I'll tell you, alam al-dhar, it doesn't mean pre-existence, because alam al-dhar actually means the world of tiny particles. If I were to make a little translation,
right.
In other words, right. But what it is referring to is pre-existence. Right?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's see right there. And it was also said, خَلَقْنَاكُمْ فِي ظَهْرِ Adam, created you in the backs of Adam. And then I'm going to go over this really quick, because I really think that they have a different wording. They have different wordings for different interpretations, but it really is going around the same areas that created Adam, and then whether it was in the back of Adam or whether it was in the details and all of that. So at the end of the day, it's all ghaib, when exactly and what really is is what really is meant by خلقناكم, we would say that it came in the plural form, and therefore the most important thing is that we were included in this order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had basically ordered Iblis and the Malaika to basically prostrate for Adam. We were included in all of this. So ثم خلقناكم ثم صورناكم, at least we understand this piece of it. And of course, the most important ayah that probably comes to mind is وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ. وإذ أخذ ربك من بني آدم من ظهورهم ذريتهم. When your Lord took from the children of Adam, basically from their backs, ذريتهم, their own offspring. All right, and here we go, basically to, just give me a second. All right. So when we look at وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُم, when basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had taken from the back of Adam his own offspring. Now, when we look at ذُرِّيَّتَهُم, again, the word ذُرِّيَّة comes from the root ذَرَى, the root which basically was what I was explaining earlier. ذَرَى can actually mean to toss something. You were talking about like just like dust, where it's just flying out and about and doesn't really have a specific weight. Okay, that's dhara. All right, and the other meaning is that dhara to actually mean just the different ants, or to basically mean the smallest particle that we would know of, and which is, why we would say, for example, قنبلة ذرية, ذرية to actually mean very small, as an atomic bomb. All right, and certainly this is a new word for it. But let's see. والحديث أنه أخرجهم أمثال الذر فأخذ عليهم الميثاق. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically created, or basically got them out, that is all the human beings, amthal dhar, like little tiny particles, and he basically took upon them al-mithaq. What is al-mithaq? Alastu bi rabbikum. In other words, it is basically part of the data that is within you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had taken upon you to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We talked about this one in detail. Even if we don't remember it, we said that it is basically stored data. It is stored data not in your brain, but it is stored data basically within you as basically fitra. Okay, now the other explanation is that, well, this is to inform us that we were created, meaning in the backs of Adam, and then basically were put in a certain shape in the wombs. What is al-rahm? Al-rahm is basically the womb. It's basically the female part, and that is where and what actually determines our shape and our image. Okay, so that basically to say that our image and our shape is basically determined in our mother's womb, even though that's not, scientifically, we know that every single sperm, so they would be able to tell a female sperm and a male sperm. In other words, a sperm that is, if taken, that was going to be a boy or that's going to be a girl. They're capable of actually telling them apart. Okay. In other words, we would see perhaps maybe that these sperms, they also carry a lot more information than we actually think in regards to, perhaps maybe all the genetic foundations are basically right there in that very small, tiny particle called a sperm, basically, and that it carries all the information. That is a mu'jiza, man. Ya Allah, this is, just think of it. Just think of it. That tiny thing right there basically carries all the information all the information in regards to what it looks like and how it forms and all of that. It's basically there, basically within it. Ya Allah. Okay, so ثم صورناكم, is that also to let us know that yes, you were created, and within that creation, there's also the data about your surah, about your image, about the details of what your formation would look like. Is that what it means? This can also be an interpretation. Okay, let's see. So what I like about Al-Qurtubi is that many times he would lay out all the different interpretations and then finally say, قلت. Love it. He said, قلت كل هذه الأقوال محتمل والصحيح منها ما يعضده التنزيل. قال تعالى ولقد خلقنا الإنسان من سلالة من طين. So all those different opinions or interpretations, he said, and I would say all of these explanations, all of these interpretations are valid. When he says muhtamal, they are all valid. And he said, and what is preponderant is what is basically verified or what is endorsed basically by التنزيل. التنزيل is basically the Quran, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ طِينٍ. As the Lord Almighty says, and we had created humans from a trace. In other words, we're speaking about a trace, we're speaking about a system. السلالة means some form of a chain of a repetition. Some form of a chain of repetition. So we're speaking about a system. A chain of repetition is basically a system, okay, in modern terms. Okay, so a system of basically teen. What is teen? Teen is mud. Okay, mud to basically mean the soil that you would see. Okay, and that's why when we decompose in basically the same minerals, the same substance as basically what we were created from, and we would decompose into basically the dhar, or at least the dust or the mud, etc. And the word mud basically is the soil plus water. Okay, so let's see, and that is Adam alayhi salam. And at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting us know that we are created from the same system. خَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا, and he had created basically, what is minha? It's not minhu, because teen, هذا طين, we don't say هذه طين. In other words, this teen, the word teen is masculine. But the word خَلَقَ مِنْهَا is feminine. So this isn't referring to basically الطين, but this is actually referring from the nafs itself. So in other words, from the same substance, from the same ruh, from the same like of Adam, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created its soul, so its pair. Okay? Let's see. ثم قال جعلناه. جعلناه, to basically say right there, جعلناه to mean human race was basically made from his own offspring, his own dhurriya, and certainly he said نطفة في قرار مكين. It was basically a nutfa, a nutfa to mean a sperm, basically qarar. What is qarar? Qarar is basically a place of dwelling, okay, and could also mean a place of stay. Al-qarar, that's, when something is staying, when something is in a place of preservation. That's also another word for qarar. Makin means firm. So, ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically had made that nutfa, or that fertilized egg, basically, that's the nutfa, that fertilized egg, or at least the sperm, basically be preserved, be in a strong place of preservation, basically in a place of temporary stay. Qarar, it's in order to stay for a certain amount of time, and it is in a place of makin. Makin to mean it is firm. It is basically held in a way that basically keeps it intact. So makin means intact. And so therefore Adam was created from teen, and then of course was shaped, and then was also given the honor to have the sujood of the malaika. And that's the same thing, of course, included in it is the offspring. And let's see, in the beginning of Surah Al-An'am, we did actually talk about that. And we said every single human being is created from basically the sperm or nutfa and also from the dust. All right. And he said, فَتَأَمَّلْ. Just take the time to ponder in that. Okay. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, خَلَقْنَاكُمْ ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. And at the end of Surah Al-Hashr, basically said, هُوَ اللَّهُ الْخَالِقُ الْبَارِئُ الْمُصَوِّرُ. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Khaliq, is the creator, is al-Bari', and is basically the one to form, and is al-Musawwar, to make into a specific shape. And he said, this is to say, التصوير بعد البرء. So basically that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first created of nothing, in other words, created the substance, and al-bari' to basically create it in a certain shape, and then it-taswir is to give it a certain form. Okay, a certain form. Okay, let's see right here. And of course, other scholars, they said خَلَقْنَا الْأَرْوَاحَ أَوَّلًا. So other scholars actually said خَلَقْنَاكُم is to say created the souls of Adam. And then صَوَّرْنَاكُم is basically create the body. Create the body. So خَلَقْنَاكُم to, this is one interpretation. خَلَقْنَاكُم not created your body, but created your souls. Okay. And then therefore, صورناكم is to create your body. It's quite, I actually like it. It's quite interesting. You know, خلقناكم, created your souls, and then صورناكم because the body is shaped. It's quite interesting. I actually like it. Okay. إلا إبليس لم يكن من الساجدين. Of course, Iblis was not amongst those that had prostrated. And the scholars, we went in details, is Iblis part of the Malaika or not? And we said the preponderant is that he is not part of the Malaika and actually part of the jinn. قال ما منعك أن لا تسجد إذ أمرتك قال أنا خير من خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. There are 4 different matters in this. So inshallah, we will continue that tomorrow. Because I know it's late for many of you. Ustaz Umayya, go ahead, dear.
Yeah, when you study Arabic philosophy, they explain that the human being, before he existed, they said that he has a hiyula shape, and we can't see it, and surah. This is صورناكم, right? Hiyula and surah. He consists of both way of existence. Hiyula in the metaphysical time before he born in عالم الذر, and surah. Are they right?
So, there are many interpretations, and I will say one thing is that a lot of these interpretations were influenced by a lot of the Greek philosophy. So, at the end, we don't actually have all that information for that ghaib piece of it. Okay? We don't have all the information to really interpret what exactly is meant by khalaqnakum and then what really happened and what does this look like. It's really alam al-ghaib. We just have some information that lets us know. One is that the most interesting one for me is that the hadith, when the Prophet ﷺ basically said that ما تعارف عليها ائتلف وما تناكر عليها اختلف.
الأرواح جنود مجندة.
Exactly, that أرواح جنود مجندة.
Yeah.
So when you look at الأرواح, it's like, how is it that I would meet a person for the first time, but for some reason we blend, we see our souls blending. Does that mean we met at one point before even the creation? Does that mean we somehow met out there and somehow is that really what it means? And
philosophy said that philosophers said that in عالم الهيولة we met each other.
I mean, that's not necessarily just philosophy, but that's some scholars' interpretation that they basically said that we met during this time when basically we were pre-existing.
All right.
All right. Now, is there necessarily something to support that? Well, only this hadith that we would know of.
Mhm.
That الأرواح جنود مجندة ما تعرف
maybe
عليها تلف. That's the word تلف.
maybe in سورة الإنسان هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا in عالم الذر in عالم الهيولة.
Right, but لم يكن شيئا مذكورا just means pre-existence.
Yeah, but he wasn't in this way of shape. He has
Right,
to
but
shape.
when you say لم يكن شيئا مذكورا, it just means you were not existent. You were not something of existence.
It's not
All right.
mean that he was in عالم الذر before he come to the
Well,
light.
right. I mean, but the word عالم الذر, that's the word that I want to comment on. Okay. That عالم الذر, what does that even mean, and what does that like? How do we understand عالم الذر? How do we understand what were we at one point meeting, communicating? What was that عالم الذر look like? How is it explained? That's that area of question.
Maybe when we are sperm in the back
No,
of
a
our
sperm is a
father.
substance. A sperm is a substance, and that sperm doesn't actually come into being a substance until later. So you could see, that interpretation that basically said خلقناكم, meaning your souls. The sperm itself does not come into substance until that boy basically reaches the age of puberty. And it doesn't come into substance. Unlike girls, they are born with all the eggs that they will basically have even when they are babies. Okay. But for boys, no. That sperm does not formulate, at least for this particular, let's say, week or month, etc. Okay. That does not formulate long before they are created. So it is not formulated during birth. It is formulated in basically whether we're speaking about the prostate or whether we're speaking about being preserved in their the testis, basically all of that does not happen when they are babies. That actually happens basically as a cycle. Proteins basically formulate all the different sperms there. Okay,
Maybe.
that's what, but ruh itself was created way before that. But
Yeah.
for girls, no, their eggs were basically part of their own makeover, even when they were in their mother's womb.
Yeah. Maybe the falasifa want to say that الهيولة it means علم الله لدني, but they couldn't explain it right because they are philosophers.
So at the end, of course, even when you're talking about philosophers, when they start explaining all the metaphysics, all of that, there's definitely a lot of influence from the Greek philosophy, which definitely we don't want to get to, because Greek philosophy was dependent on a lot of their own imagination. So I would not whatsoever consider it as a basis for me to depend on in understanding hype. I wouldn't use it as a basis or as a valid statement to explain Nas itself. So
but
I'll just stick to Nas and just say, Allahu A'lam.
but it's very close to علم الله لدني than to about what it say about
I'm
الهيولة.
not sure I agree with that, because even علم اللدن, how much do we know of that? We don't know much, really. We
It's
just
special
know.
for Allah, special knowledge.
We don't actually know much of it. And even
Because
this ilm, it's basically given to, given whether we're speaking about Anbiya, we're speaking about very high level Salihin. I wouldn't depend on that unless they gave me that piece of it.
yeah, but when we discuss about the علم اسم الله, the attribution of the knowledge علم الله العليم, It's يعلم ما كان وما هو كائن وما سيكون وما لم
There's
يكن
no
لو
question
كان.
about that.
You see?
No question about that.
Yeah.
No question that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this ilm.
So
But
في
the
علم
question
الله
is,
لدني.
right, the question is, we already know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this ilm. There's no question. No one would
Yeah.
disagree on that. But the question is, does that person, are we capable of getting that ilm? That's the question. Like here I am, okay? Is there a way that there's some information from the time of pre-existence that basically came to my knowledge in understanding, and here I am, I'm aware of it, okay? There's no question that there's some ilm that is related to our existence, that is passed on as data, your color vise, your things that relate to ancestry, whatever, we know that in genetics. But is there another type of information that one day, I love Umayyah so much, I'm not sure why, but is it because that somehow we were somehow best friends in the time of pre-existence? And I can claim it and make a claim that, yeah, we were best friends in that pre-existence time, and yeah, we must have been just always somehow playing together in that time of pre-existence.
Yeah.
And that we're,
أرواح
I mean,
تعارف.
you understand me? So that's the thing, is that, but at the same time, we always see that there could be some two people, they were best friends at one point, and then they became the worst enemies at one point. Right? What happened there? Did they just not blend? I thought they blended at one point. How did they not blend anymore? All right. So at the end, this is, this is part of Alam al-Ghaib. How far does it go? How far does it go? And how does it have a relationship with how we understand, how we blend, how we click, how we link to one another? Allahu A'lam. There is this hadith that al-arwahu junudun mujannada, that we can relate to, but it still is containing a lot of ambiguity for us to give detailed interpretation of what that really means and how we can actually put it into effect in our lives.
We still need more discussion about this hadith.
Inshallah, maybe I can
MashaAllah.
lay it out, inshallah, next class, tomorrow, inshallah, lay it out, and perhaps maybe we can see the scholar's commentary on it. I will do that, inshallah, next class. How about that?
Inshallah. But usually
Inshallah.
on Saturday you don't have a class. So this mean this course
This was
will
a makeover because
uh,
on Saturday, on Friday, was it? On Friday, I wasn't able to make a class.
I see.
So
When
this was just a makeover.
what about fiqh when you start fiqh? Zakat
I was supposed to start yesterday and I totally forgot about it. But Noura was telling me